it's a very successful philosophy. So today we're gonna see what is this design thinking about and why should we care about it. So what is design thinking? So before we go into this, let me ask you another question, which is, do you recognize these two pictures? Yes, you can type in the chat. Yes, okay. So if I ask you, which one do you think is more complex? What would you say? Interesting. I put these pictures here because the Golden Bridge, when it was built, was one of the most complicated things that man had built ever. And it was a wonder of, it was built about 75 years ago, and it was amazing. But if you compare it to an app or any of the app we use today, if you count, for example, the number of components of each project, apps have way more different and unique components than the Golden Bridge. If you think about it, the Golden Bridge has a lot of similar components, trusses, cables, bolts. It has a lot of bolts, but they're always the same kind of bolt, and the way we put them is always the same. See, and the bricks, the same. All the bricks are very similar. So if you think about the number of different components, about the relationship between these components, in number of relationships, a number of different components, any app today is way more complex than the Golden Bridge, even though the size is very different. And so we live in this world of, especially in software, of complexity. And what does that mean? That means that the old thinking that we all have been taught at school, which is the engineering thinking, which was very successful, very successful to build bridges, which was about, okay, you have an idea, you want to build a bridge, fine, you make a plan for the bridge, right? You plan it, and then, well, you start building it, right? You build it, and then you test it, right? And then you evaluate it. Very nice. Right? That's the typical engineering thinking. And because engineering has been so successful in our lives, especially civil engineering, when software appeared in the world, what did we do? We applied the same, we copy-paste the same ideas from engineering to software. Well, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that they are very different problems. Like, as we just saw, software, the complexity of software is very different from engineering projects. Engineering projects might be huge, you need to plan months in advance, and so on. But the complexity doesn't compare to the thousands of relationships, the fragility of the systems that we face today in software. Imagine today a simple website relies on so many stacks of technology, versions of software, and so on. Any of you who is a developer knows these bugs, right? And so that means that we cannot apply the same thinking that made us successful to this new world of complexity. That's another interesting thing about complexity, and those of you who know Agile know this, is that in a complexity world, there is so much knowledge that we need to know in order to have a successful project. In other words, we need to know so many things about the relationship between the components of our project that it is impossible for a single person, the boss, to know everything. And you cannot be a good boss if you don't know anything. In other words, when you are in a complex situation like software or websites or e-commerce, the idea of having a hierarchy doesn't work very well, and that's what Agile preaches, and that's why Agile is so successful, because Agile has recognized, yes, in a complexity situation, the boss doesn't know everything, so the role of the boss has to change. And so in design thinking, we have the very similar situation. So yes, the Uber app is orders of magnitude more complex than this amazing feat of engineering, right? So this is about what we talk about when we talk about complexity. And so what is design thinking? Well, design thinking had been around for a while at Stanford, and it was only until 1975, 76, 77 that a graduate from Stanford, this is David Kelly, one of the founders of IDEO. IDEO, if you know, it's the company that it's a design consulting firm. So companies that need, for example, a design for a new phone or a new mouse or a new ATM. It is a company that provides these design services. So imagine, for example, Wells Fargo, this American bank, when they need to design the ATM, and the menus, the machine, the sounds that the ATM does, they don't do it in-house. They go to firms like IDEO, and then IDEO designs the ATM, and so somebody else builds it. IDEO was the first firm to use design thinking, and it was like a secret weapon, and it was so successful that, and nobody knew exactly why, but they were so successful. The customers of IDEO, they Wells Fargo, all these companies, even Apple, which was one of the first customers, they loved the results, and they didn't know how they did it, but they loved because the customers didn't complain about the products. So that was the first time that we saw, wow, design thinking is quite interesting. And from that moment, which is about from late 70s until now, basically, design thinking has taken the world by storm. And it started with industrial design, industrial products, consumer products, but then it shifted to designing service applications, designing the hotel experience, and so on. You can basically apply design thinking to anything that involves a customer. Hospital visits, a restaurant, anything. In Europe, design thinking is often known as service design, and in America it's more known as design thinking. Right, so this is David Kelly, a key figure in this, because he was basically the first person who started making money out of it. And then the whole design thinking thing exploded in 1999 when IDEO, the firm that David Kelly founded, was featured in a 60-minute episode in ABC TV, American TV. And then it just became super popular. So that's the background. So let's see what is the secret weapon that these Americans discovered. And so design thinking is basically a methodology on how to work when you have a problem like design a new application that the customers love. And usually you will see this chart, this famous chart. It's usually five phases. So remember, it doesn't tell you how to design something. It tells you how you should organize your team so that your design is successful. So it's not about design principles, which many people think, oh, design thinking is about how to design things. It's not about how you design the thing, it's about how you should work together as a team. And so there's five phases that it's recommended when you want to use this method of working to tackle a problem, a design problem. Like, for example, designing an app. And the first phase is what we call empathize with the customer. And this means that you usually would gather a team of 5-6 people in your company. You would try to have women and men. You would try to have a person from sales, an engineer, a UX designer, a DevOps or an operations person, and a manager in the team. And you would try to select people that are good at working in group. Many times happens that just one toxic person in the team will destroy the whole thing. So it's very difficult to find first diverse people and then people that are good at working in a team. So diversity is key, and once you have this team and they learn about the problem, for example, design a new app, the empathize phase, they're supposed to go to meet potential users of this service and interview, learn what they are doing, their motivations of the potential customers, and so on. And that means, for example, shadowing. What's that? That means, for example, following the customer for a whole day through his life, shadowing and taking pictures and really learning about it. Interviews are fine, but interviews never tell you the truth. There was this famous case of a ready-made food company that hired IDEO to design a new product. So IDEO sent one person to shadow a random American family. During the interview, the mom of the household, she was asked, so do you cook often at home? And the mom said, yes, of course I cook at home. Yes. And so the shadow person followed this mom for one day. And so when the mom came back from work, she started cooking something in the kitchen. This was around 6 o'clock. Then at 6:30, the kids came back from school. They opened the door, they smelled the kitchen, and the kids said surprisingly, "Mom, you cooked." And this is an example of why you cannot ask the customers about their lives, because they sometimes they're not even conscious of how their lives are. And that's why it's very important to go and get this information firsthand whenever you can. And you may think, oh, that's an easy skill I can do. No, it's a really difficult skill. Actually, the best people at doing this are the ones who have studied a specialty called anthropology. And that's why you may find a lot of anthropologists working at design firms like IDEO. Right, so very important thing. Then the second one is to define the problem. So usually what we do is we would spend 2 weeks full time learning about the customers and the problems. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And we would take pictures and make reports and videos. And then we would come back into a room and we will sit around a table, and then what we do, we debrief, we explain what we learn to the rest of the team. That's fascinating. And so we learn about the stakeholders of this problem. Usually it's not just the customer, there's other people involved, the companies, governments, parents, kids. Could be. Then we identify what are the main points, what did we actually learn, and then you have a more defined problem. Once you've done that, you're in a very good position to ideate, what we call propose ideas. The number one mistake, silly thing to do is to propose ideas without having studied the customer. Once you've done that, it's a good time to brainstorm, and there are a series of techniques to maximize the creative IQ of the team. And so this involve brainstorming, silent brainstorming, and things that design thinking borrows from improvisation theater, like yes and thinking and so on. Right. Then once this is done, this brainstorming is done, brainstorming of solutions and ideas, it's a good time to do a prototype, which involves taking your maybe sketches or just words of ideas and making them a bit more real. For example, in the case of an app, we could be talking about a Figma prototype. In the case of a restaurant, my students usually do a mock-up of the restaurant, the layout, like a physical mock-up that you can see, and so on. Prototypes could involve also role-playing. So if it's an app, you could role-play as in a theater how the people would use this app. And finally is a test. And this becomes a loop. These 5 steps, which don't tell you how to design, and they tell you how to work as a group, is what design thinking is about. The difficult thing about doing this well is finding the right people that can work together. Yes? And so, question for you, which one of the 5 phases do you feel it's the hardest to do? Well, actually, for us engineers, that nobody has told us ever how to empathize. Empathize is the most difficult one. It's the most difficult because, as I told you, it's a skill. It's not easy. It requires practice. And you may think, oh, I can empathize with the customer. No, it is a research skill. This is how to learn about the customer, how to shadow someone, how to interview someone. These are professional skills, and they are highly paid in design thinking companies, right? Once you've done that, you can the quality of all the other steps depend on this blue component called empathize. Yes, wonderful, great. Right. So how does design thinking look like? Like, okay, Jose, stop talking and just show us, right? Show me, don't tell me, right? So here you have a picture from Dartmouth School of Engineering that Karen was very kind to lend us. So this is how it looks like. And this is a question. Yes, very good. So can you point to the most critical part of this scene? You see here 4 students. You see a book, a table, pencils. You see a whiteboard with post-its. Which area of this photo, which object do you think is the most important for the design thinking workshop? All right, that's very interesting. I see. Right. Good. Yeah, very good. Right. So interesting. Okay. Right. So here's a small explanation of what's going on here. This would be the ideate phase in a typical design thinking. This means after having spent 2 weeks researching about the problem and the customer, and what we post on the whiteboard is all the things that we have learned. For example, here you can see some pictures, so probably showing us the problems of the customer, and some post-its which probably are ideas. And what's happening here, this is design thinking in action. What's happening here is that this whiteboard is a place to hold information. Remember that the humans cannot hold more than 7 pieces of information at the same time in their brains, right? So what's happening here, we're using this whiteboard as an extended memory of our brains, and then we're using it as a shared memory space in the hopes that any of these 4 students might have the solution to the puzzle to solve this problem in a creative way. And that's why having a whiteboard and having the information displayed in this format is so critical to do this process. Today we can do this with Miro boards or FigJam and other tools, but remember this, very important. If you go to a design thinking company and they do not have a whiteboard, that's a red flag. Right, here is another picture. This is a workshop we did for Apple in 2013. These are the engineers that designed the mechanical enclosures of the MacBooks. And so this is how it looks like, a prototyping tool. You may think, oh, I'm working for Lulu Group. We do software. Yeah, but you still can prototype. You still can prototype with paper. It's amazing. It's really good. In this case, they were prototyping a toaster. Right. This is a picture of the design school. So this is the director of the design school. So as you can see, high ceilings to inspire your brain, your thinking, and lots of post-its, which, as I said, it's very important. The Stanford Design School, which is sponsored by Hasso Plattner, which is one of the founders of SAP, is the leading place for design thinking, and its sister institute in Berlin, the Hasso Plattner Institute, is the other one in Europe. Most of these 2 places have educated most of the design thinking practitioners in the world today. Yes. Right. And design school has created a lot of, you can see here on the top right, lots of materials, videos, and workshops, and they offer them for free to the world that you can use. In my courses, I use them quite extensively. Wonderful, great. Right, this is another picture. These slides are from sorry, it's a fly, from a book. Our book that we use is a textbook. And what's interesting about this slide is the role. So if you notice here, I'm just gonna annotate this a little bit. Yeah. So if you notice here, you have a table, and this table is not huge, it's small. And the reason it's small is that you want to have a good fluid communication between your team members, and that means, like, can you have fluid communication if the table is very big and you cannot hear the other person in the room? No, you can't. So that's one key point here. The other key is the chairs, that all of them have wheels, and then you have what we call a very important thing we call roles. So you have 3 main roles. You have this guy who is Peter Skillman, the inventor of the spaghetti workshop. And this role is called the facilitator. So this is the guy in charge of managing the phases in the design thinking process. His job is not to give ideas, his job is just to manage. You could think of him as the agile coach or the scrum master. Then you have this guy here. This guy doesn't talk, doesn't say anything. He's just watching. So what's his job? He's called the backup man. And this guy here and this guy here, they will meet in secret away from the rest of the people, and they will discuss things. And because he's just watching and he is busy talking, he can see things that the facilitator misses, and this is very important. And then you have normal people here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This, each one of them, for example, this is a biochemistry PhD, this is an anthropology major, engineer, each one is different background. Fascinating. Yes? Right, good. So roles are very important in this process as well. I will clear the pictures, and I want to finish with a really hilarious video that I think explains how design thinking sometimes can create value. Are you ready? It's 1 minute long. Let's see. It starts at 23. And I will put the caption just in case. All right, let's go. Let's see. He is going to talk about the Eurostar tunnel. If you're familiar, the Eurostar tunnel was built between London and Paris, and it goes underwater. And it was very expensive to build, but we did it. It was very expensive. And then after it was built, they did some improvements so that the train could go faster. Okay, very well. So let's see how this person, Rory Sutherland, has applied design thinking, or would apply design thinking, to improve the happiness of the customers of the Eurostar or the Eurotunnel. Let's see what he has to say. I will tell you why. It's because the bosses were engineers, and they were looking for an engineering solution instead of thinking, how can we make the customers happier? And it's true that if you put Wi-Fi on trains, people forget about time. And if you say his second option, they will also not only be happy, but super happy. And this is all what I have to say about design thinking. I have one more slide, which is right. So all these slides are from this book, which we wrote. It's the textbook we use at the university, and it's a free iBook, and you can just Google it on the iBook store, and you will find it. You will find it there. Yes. Right. And now questions. Oh, you cannot hear? You cannot hear me? Yes.
We can hear you. The video wasn't audible. That's why.
What about now? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Testing.
we can. We can hear you.
So I was saying that all these slides, I took them from this book we made, and it's free in the Apple iBook store. It's an interactive book with videos inside. And so, oh, you could not hear the audio of the video. This is terrible. So sorry. Okay, so I will explain you what he said. He said that a lot of money was spent on improving the speed of this tunnel, the train in the tunnel. A lot of money. And that they improve what the travel time was reduced 20 minutes. Okay? Very well. But he said that if you had spent 0.01% of the money in putting Wi-Fi in the train, people would have been happier. And if you had spent 1% of that money in hiring the top 100 models and supermodels to give champagne inside the train, the customers would have even been happier. And he wonders why this option was not thought about, because it's true that when you put Wi-Fi on the train, people forget about time. And probably if you offer 20 minutes shorter time or Wi-Fi on the train, I know what's gonna make customers forget about the length of the travel time. It's the Wi-Fi. So that's a very interesting opinion. And he asked why the engineers in charge of this project, they didn't think about it. And it's because, well, first, they didn't use design thinking, and second, they didn't have any psychologist on board, right? And so that's the thing that design thinking solves. Just imagine how much money was wasted, and if they had spent like 1% on Wi-Fi, they would have achieved probably a better customer satisfaction. Yes? So think about these blind spots when you're working. Think about having a diverse team around you, giving you different perspective, because everything counts. Wonderful. And with this, I will give my word to. Yeah, it's engineers. Right. Any questions? Wonderful.
Professor, one question. Ankur this side.
Yes, please.
Professor, how would you differentiate between first principle thinking and design thinking? First principle thinking also talks about kind of solving problems. Okay, and this also I would look at a problem solving technique centered around people. Okay, and we have examples of Elon Musk talking about first principle thinking, solving problems at Tesla, SpaceX, building innovative products. Then if you go back some time in history, we have Richard Feynman, the great physicist, who used to think that way. And how do we differentiate between these two? These two are similar in nature. Like, I mean, first principle thinking versus design thinking.
Yeah, that's very good. I would say, for example, just give an example, right? Like, for example, if you are in the electric car business, and you know that when mass production comes, the cost is proportional to the materials that you're using. Once you have automation, this and that, yes, you can use the mass production curves to see how the price of the components will move, and then you can say, well, I know you can predict the prices and the future and plan for it, right? Well, as design thinking, it's more about a method of how to work in group.
Okay.
It doesn't tell you. It tells you, hey, have a guy that knows first principles in your team. It will tell you that. But it will not tell you what to do with the first principles. Yes?
Yeah, I agree. Okay. And Professor, it's similar analogy, that example that you gave in terms of putting Wi-Fi. I mean, we have mirrors in elevators wherein people get busy looking at themselves rather than being worried about the speed of the elevator in case it's a taller building. So you focus on other aspects rather than increasing the speed of the elevator, which would require some level of engineering. They put mirrors in the elevator so that people get distracted. You're not focused on the problem, and just time goes by.
Absolutely. But think about how much money these Eurostar people wasted. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
Because they were not thinking about, they were thinking in a box, of engineering box, which we are all guilty, because I mean, you cannot know everything as an engineer, and they don't teach these things to engineers. But that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of value to be unlocked when you look a bit around 360.
Much cheaper price point.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's very hard to put a psychologist working with an engineer, because they're just going to kill each other because they speak completely different languages. So how you make that they don't kill each other? Design thinking gives you these guidelines and this way of working together. So that's the thing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sir, there is a question in the comment section. I will read
Yes.
it out for you.
Yes,
So
please.
it is, who owns or is responsible for the UX in an organization?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Oh, wow. Maybe somebody can answer this question in the audience. Yes, Joseph Clitus should answer this question.
That was my question.
If you are using Scrum or Agile in your organization, there is a guy called the product owner, right? So the product owner is the person that interfaces with the person paying for the app, whoever that organization or person is, with the engineer. So remember, you never let the person paying for the app talk to your engineers directly, because he doesn't know the damage it can do to the workflow. So you always have this product owner in the middle, a person that can talk to engineers and to the non-engineers. Fine. So the product owner is like the gatekeeper. And if you look at Agile, what we do is like time box the time we have for the project in weeks, sprints, and then decide what's the highest value we can deliver in one sprint. And usually the person paying for the app wants everything. Like, I want this feature, and I want this feature. And the job of the product owner say, yes, but you can only have one for this sprint. Which one? And then once they decide, the product owner decides what goes into the sprint backlog. So I would say it's not about who is owning, it's like who is the gatekeeper. And of course in Agile, as you know, there's this sprint planning meeting where the developers, the product owner, and the Scrum Master, they gather and they have a meeting. Okay, what do we do? And the product owner is the voice of this customer or business analyst. Yeah.
Great. Professor, one more question is, how do you test when you reach a scale, a product is already reached a scale, but you see the environment is changing, customers are changing. Maybe we want to introduce new features which is drastically different from what we have been traditionally offering. How do you test it at a scale?
That's a very interesting question. How to evolve the product. And the interesting thing is, for example, there's a very interesting case about this, is the Meetup application for meetups. The Meetup application has been stuck in their design forever. And the reason it's stuck is not that they don't know how to change, is that they have a big user base that is used to the old design, which is horrible and terrible, but it works. And they cannot change it because they have so many customers used to the old one. And that's the drama of this, how to do these changes. I think if you look at Facebook, how they have evolved the Facebook application, they have done a great job. But you have also seen user revolts with, for example, Snapchat, when they change a little bit the interface, or even Instagram. Yes. So this is a very delicate process that I don't have any good advice for you.
Thank you.
So
So we
Gisho,
have,
yeah.
okay. So we have another question by Jijo Joseph. So the question is, after the ideations, once we define the problem, can we be able to define the ROI too? What are the possible ways to calculate the ROI?
Very
Should I
interesting. I have no idea at all where there is a flavor of design thinking called Lean UX, where we call the prototypes MVPs, minimum viable products, which means try to build the cheapest prototype you can build so that you get real feedback from the market. A famous case is when Dropbox started. When Dropbox started, they didn't start building Dropbox right out from the beginning. What they did was they make a Photoshop video where somebody was seen using Dropbox as if it was working, but it was not working. It was all fake. It was Photoshop. And then they showed this video on a website called Hacker News, and they said, who wants to try this software? If you want to try it, send us an email. And I think they got like 4,000 emails in a couple of hours. That's a very good MVP, minimum viable product, that gives you an idea of how much market demand or market fit there is for your product without having to build it or spend a lot of time or money prototyping it. Wonderful.
Professor, sorry, I've been asking a lot of questions. So how do you make traditional organizations understand the value of UX?
This is a thorny question, Joseph. The problem is not understanding the value. The problem is status quo. Like if you have a successful organization with managers and middle managers whose power or even employment depends on a given way of working, and we come with a new idea from outside that they don't know anything about it, that threatens their world, what do you expect? The natural reaction is resistance. And that's normal and good, because if there was no resistance to change in organizations, any silly change could come and change the organization that is working well into a bad organization. So resistance is a protection mechanism. The problem comes when you need to change, or the problem comes when you have a lot of employees that don't want to change or they cannot change. So what do you do with them? And that is a very difficult problem. There's a lot of theories, management theories, case studies on how to solve it. One of my favorite is the small win theory. And the idea behind it is that you don't start with a big change in the organization. You start with a small project change that is so small that nobody will oppose it. And then from there, you start having bigger and bigger changes. It's called a small win theory. I hope that helps.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That helps.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
I hope there is any other questions. Thank you so much for the session, sir. It was truly a wonderful learning experience for all of us. So now I welcome Shamma S. Al-Saidi from Alain University to share her experience with Professor Dr. Joss. Over to you, Shamma.
Good evening. Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
It's been a while since the last course I took with you.
Yes, Shamma, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, alhamdulillah. So yeah, I want to talk a little about my experience with Dr. Jose and how his courses affected me in a better way, in which it's enlightened me to become, let's say, to think differently. Things that we learn in university usually does not help us, honestly, in our work later. But the things that we learned during the course with Dr. Jose definitely are the most useful out of everything I studied in the university. So I'm really thankful for that. And I think a lot of topics that you spoke about before are the ones that are currently, let's say, the one that everyone would ask me about. So I'm thankful for that because I'm able to keep up. I think this is the main thing that I want to say. And
Thank
it's nice
you.
to meet you again.
That's so amazing. Thank you. I'm so glad that what I teach was useful, at least to someone.
It certainly
What
does.
was the most useful thing that you have used at Lulu, Shamma?
I would say it's not a thing as much it is the way of thinking.
It's a very good answer. Very good answer. A+ for you.
I got an A, so yeah.
You got an A. No wonder. Thank you for these kind words. That's very nice.
Thank you very much.
Super awesome. Wonderful.
Thank you, Shamma. Sir, we have one more question by Anupam Jaydeep. So the question is, are there any limitations or problems that could arise due to design thinking?
There are many. Number one, the typical we just mentioned before, is that people think that design thinking, that you can do a brainstorming and that it will be fantastic. Wrong. Doing a brainstorming without doing the homework of going to understand the problem for 2 weeks, useless. Completely useless. That's the number one problem. The number two problem, having toxic people in the team. There's people that talk a lot and kill other people's ideas. It's the job of the facilitator to shut down these people or to select the people who will go in the team. Yes, these two are the main problems with design thinking. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Now I welcome my colleague, Mr. Satish Kumar, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, Satish.
Good evening to all. It has been such an honor to be part of this wonderful interactive session, sir. On behalf of our PD family, I esteem your presence here, and I sincerely gratitude your presence here, and you make this session more interactive with us because of the presentation and the interaction and the questionnaire, everything. It will be very good and it will be very interactive as, and because you use me as well and use our colleagues as well on the section. So and also the things, because these things are the life cycle of our job cycle, because these are all things we are just going through all the days on your life cycle. Okay, so you make the day more better than sessions, and I really thank you for your presentation and on your interaction and everything else. So thank you so much for your thing, and also I want to thank you all the presenter to be part here with us and make the section more interactive. Thank you all. Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Satish. So we came to the end of today's session. Thank you all for joining. Srikant sir, do you have anything to share with us?
Oh, thank you, Rosemary. And we have some wonderful questions. And of course, as I was at the beginning, I was mentioning about these NFJs is always giving a new thought or some new ideas would be adding to our kitty in all sessions, new ways of working. This is also one of those such sessions where we got a lot of insights and ideas about design thinking. And I've just noted down only one area is like you would be more the empathy. You should be empathized towards your consumer, the customer, the consumer, the end consumer, who understand the pain, the exact pain, what he really feels, and then the solution what he or she is looking for, or the community is looking for. If we empathize and if we understand, that would be the first